and the plane is landing, and thank you for a lot of good questions, okay? Thank you very much.
He's like, get me the hell out of here. Anybody ever see a president of the United States jump out of an airplane? Well, you're not exactly about to see that here, but you're going to see a president of the United States visibly want to jump out of an airplane when he gets a question he does not want to hear about the economy and the probability of an upcoming recession. But before we unpack all of that, I have brought with me the ultimate co-pilot, my friend and yours, Luke Beasley of the friggin' Luke Beasley Show. More than 1 million subscribers, I might add. Luke, how you doing, buddy?
Wow, I didn't even know that's how this segment was going to start about the plane. I was thinking, wait, I don't have the clip. What are you talking about? Josiah, I've been having Josiah withdrawals, so it's good to get my fix in.
No, listen, man. We're both mutual addicts in that respect. I love it, love to see it, and we're gonna land this plane in an upright fashion, which is rare these days under the Trump administration. But before we play the clip in question, we need to actually refer to another clip that was recent, an exchange between Donald Trump and MAGA Fox News host Maria Bartiromo, where she poses to him the question about the upcoming potential recession.
And I want to ask you about Ukraine and the blow up the other day with Zelensky. Let me stay on the economy for a moment, because there are rising worries about a slowdown. You've got the Atlanta Federal Reserve saying we're going to have a contraction in the first quarter. Look, I know that you inherited a mess, and you said that the other night.
I've only been here,
but are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition, because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us. I mean, I think it should be great.
So
it's going to be great.
We go ahead and cut it. So, and I don't want to spend too much time on this specific clip, because I want to play the next one and we'll get into all of it, including this one. But Luke, can we just say how she had to fluff him up to ask that question? Like, I know you inherited such a mess, and it's not your fault at all because you're perfect. But what do you think? Like, did you catch that?
Which also, I know on both of our shows, we've been going through how, unlike the tenuous connection they'd make when they try to blame all sorts of things on Biden right whenever he got into office, you actually have direct shifts in the metrics responding to and reports citing the exact reasons that these metrics went from looking all right to not so great. And it has to do with the trade wars. It has to do with the mass layoffs and the uncertainty economically. But it's hilarious how there he'll go, wait, I've only been in office a few weeks. But then you have his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, and him frequently saying, we already brought the economy roaring back and we've had such a productive few weeks and look at what we've done in a few weeks. So you think there's going to be a recession? I've only been in a few weeks. Okay, let's get out of control here. I didn't do anything practically.
Yeah, I know. So much to unpack there. To tee up the next clip, though, when Maria Bartiromo asked that question on Fox, I mean, it set the media on fire and the internet on fire. So the next clip I'm about to show you is Donald Trump on Air Force One, thus the plane that we were talking about in that open. He is basically asked to follow up by the reporters about his prediction of a Trump recession. I just want you to see how quickly he shuts it down.
We're just about ready to land.
Are you worried about a recession? Maria Bartiromo asked you, and you kind of hesitated.
I'll tell you what, of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this: we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch. We're going to have jobs, we're going to have open factories, it's going to be great, and the plane is landing, and thank you for a lot of good questions, okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, President.
He's out.
So again, he's like, get me the hell out of here. The pilot was probably listening and like, I need to make some turbulence so that we can cut this conversation short. But so let's talk about this, Luke. Between that clip and the one that we played at the very beginning about Maria Bartiromo, what the hell's going on with this economy, man? I mean, you've been doing safaris into local grocery chains, investigating the price of eggs. So let's unpack this for a minute. I mean, you mentioned earlier that there was a pretty strong connection between the uncertainty created by the Trump administration and the ripple effects with the economy. What the hell's going on?
Well, and it's strange how willing Trump is to admit now, after campaigning on the opposite, that things are going to get bad. He described it as disturbance during his speech to the joint session of Congress. Now, there may be a little bit of a disturbance. And also, people are totally fine to pay higher prices because they trust me and it'll be great. No, you ran on the opposite. And I'm yet to hear you have all of these MAGA social media accounts doing a 180. It was Trump's going to make things affordable again. And now they're going, what do you care about affordability for? Psh, no, we want to be isolationist. And he keeps saying that we're going to bring wealth back to America. But the mechanism by which he's seeking to do so is pushing wealth out of America. And then last little thing before throwing it back to you, Josiah, one of the particularly incoherent elements of this is if he actually stood by his tariff belief, right? He at least says he has this ideology that we solve all of our economic ills by slapping massive tariffs, essentially trying to isolate us economically. But what he keeps doing is creating that uncertainty, applying the tariffs, causing backlash from the other countries, and then pausing them and starting them and pausing them, which is horrible for the markets. It's horrible for business certainty. It's horrible for future planning for business. It's horrible in so many ways. But in the meanwhile, those month pauses that keep happening means even from his perspective, the tariffs aren't doing the good thing that he says they could do, which he's wrong about. But in his, by his standard, he's not even accomplishing that. But what he is accomplishing is the countries are still isolating from us. They're still thinking, I guess we can't depend on the United States economically as much. An example is Canada taking U.S. liquor off their shelves. And so we're having no quote unquote Trump benefits from the tariffs that he would outline, even though that's wrong. But we are still seeing the negative backlash to the alienating, of our allies, including U.S. business interests being undermined abroad.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's that expression, is the juice worth the squeeze? And with Trump, we're getting all squeeze and no juice whatsoever. I mean, Canada, I got to say.
I don't want his juices.
Juices? Oh, yes.
Don't talk about Trump's juices, Josiah.
You and Melania both, Luke. You and Melania both. But I mean, I gotta say that as an observer of politics, I'm sure you feel the same way, even though it sucks because we'll also be impacted by this too. I got to say, I appreciate Canada's approach to this in the sense that Canada has adopted the position that if Trump is going to slap tariffs on them, not only will they reciprocate, even though they are a smaller economy and they're less economically powerful, they're going to try to match it dollar for dollar, and they're going to specifically target red states. You mentioned that, U.S. liquor was being taken off the shelves. That's going to severely impact, for example, Kentucky, a state in which I lived. It's led by a Democratic governor, but it's a deep red state. Bourbon is perhaps the single greatest element of the Kentucky economy, and it's going to be devastated if these tariffs persist. And it's all because of Donald Trump. And, you mentioned at the very beginning too, and I understand that to the vast majority of Trump's base, they don't care. Let's just be very clear about this. They do not care, and I think often celebrate Trump's hypocrisy. But it's still worth noting for the hundreds or thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of people on the margin who might be persuaded. But when Trump was campaigning, when he was trying to get your vote, mine, yours, which he didn't get, but I mean, people in general, eligible voters, he was telling you, listen, you put me in office on day one, I will end inflation. I will cut costs. Gas, grocery costs, not just eggs, but groceries in general, cost of living, healthcare, et cetera, and so forth. It's going to go down faster than your head can spin. You have no idea, right? And now he's constantly moving the goalpost, and he almost treats it with an incredulity, like when the question's posed to him, like, why would you assume that I haven't been in office for this long? Like, why would you assume that I could just end it up? Well, you said the expectation, right? Not only did you impose that expectation on Biden, as a point that you well made, but Trump created that expectation for himself by saying starting day one. And I think this is something that's worth pointing out. Some people will say, like, next time you go on Piers Morgan, he will no doubt tell you, Luke, you can't hold Trump to that standard. It's like, no. Trump created that standard for himself, and he's doing the exact opposite. And we're seeing the consequences for Trump in the polls. He's hemorrhaging support, not just overall. It's the shortest political honeymoon in the history of the United States since polling has been a thing, but also even with regards to the economy, Trump is hemorrhaging support. He's underwater on the economy. I also just want to say, have you noticed, obviously it's not a lot of MAGA, but Maria Bartiromo is a MAGA Fox News host. She's freaking out about it. I just did a segment about a former Trump economic advisor, Stephen Moore, who's a Fox News contributor. He's a MAGA economist. He's freaking out about it. Do you expect to see more prominent MAGA influencers or people on Fox News start to like, hey, Donald, these tariffs are a bad idea? Or do you think that for the most part, we've seen the extent of the dissent for Trump?
I think there will be a few categories. One, I keep referencing this on my show, but one strange moment that keeps replaying in my head is I forget her name, but one of those hardcore Trump supporter Fox shows. And before Trump's speech to the joint session of Congress, she said, I know Trump has a plan, and I hope that he'll share. I hope that he'll share it with us, but I just want him to tell us that everything's going to be okay. But I know it will be. I know he has a plan. So I think you'll have a lot of that where people admit to the pain ultimately, but honestly, both of these things, they're going to misdiagnose the why and then be just pleading with Trump to give answers when the real answer is Trump either doesn't know what he's doing or he's doing something very malicious that I can't exactly understand what he thinks the outcome is here. But I do think increasingly some will break with him overtly. We've seen your more center-right outlets like the Wall Street Journal being more blunt in articulating
They've
that
been
Trump
relentless,
is,
Luke, to your point.
Because they're really
relentless.
business, interest concerned, and so they're frightened. And I hope if the Democratic Party has one iota of sense, they'll be able to create an electoral landslide in the coming elections because of the damage Trump's going to be doing. One thing, though, Josiah, that's really been bothering me is you'll see Maria, you'll see Ben Shapiro, etc. going, well, you know that tariffs actually will increase prices for Americans, and that could actually end up upsetting them. And Trump seems to be using this like a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel. And it's like right now they're realizing what it is that Trump. It's like he had to do it for them to believe that he intended on doing it, which is infuriating because you and I, you mentioned Piers Morgan, in debates across the country were being laughed at by Trump supporters going, he's not going to do the terrible things you say that he's going to do. And then he does it all, and they're out there acting like they're the voice of reason by breaking with him. No, you ran for this guy, or you ran cover for him and you supported him. You tried to get him elected when we already knew that this wasn't a shock. It's not like he came out and all of a sudden was implementing some wild far left climate trans mouse bill or something like that. He is doing the thing he said, and some of his supporters are acting surprised, which I guess I'm happy to see them admitting some stuff. But where were you when the hundreds of economists were coming out and saying Kamala Harris' proposal will lead to growth, Trump's could lead to a recession? Where were they, Josiah?
Listen, they were sacrificing their principle on the altar of political expediency. And yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine having such twisted partisan logic. And I say this as somebody who is an open partisan, but I don't think to the extent that I'm willing to gleefully sacrifice all my principles. But to be so partisanly twisted that I am supporting a candidate and the whole thing is predicated on the hopes that they don't actually do the things. You know what I'm saying? To be like, I'm backing Joe Biden or Kamala Harris on the hopes that they don't actually do the things that they promised to do. It's a totally ass-backwards philosophy that I do not understand, quite frankly. But we'll see what happens with regards to this recession. We see Trumpflation skyrocketing. We see the unnecessary Trump trade war. And again, the Trumpflation, we're seeing signs of it with the forecast by the Atlanta Federal Reserve and consumer productivity, consumer habits, and things like that. It's entirely possible that we might avoid one, but I'll point out that 10 out of the last 11 recessions, ladies and gentlemen, began under Republican administration. So past is not on Trump's side there.
So weird. But I thought they were good for the economy. That's what I heard growing up.
I totally agree. If you ignore all the facts and just listen to what they tell you, they are really good for the economy. Luke, I appreciate it. Where can people find you, sir?
Just search Luke Beasley on YouTube. I appreciate you. To the moon and back, Josiah.
All right, man. Good to see you.